What a wild week in Los Angeles it has been in the Los Angeles sports world. The Los Angeles Sparks, we talked about getting Kelsey Plum, the Lakers getting Luka Doncic, the Dodgers doing everything they're doing, and the Los Angeles Rams now, not that it's done yet, but there are some rumors now. We're going to break it all down of maybe possibly the Rams adding a superstar on defense. No one's rumoring the Rams are involved necessarily, but we're going to talk all about why I think the Rams should make this move, all on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua. You don't remember, if you guys are not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor and press that subscribe button, as these numbers may have changed, but for the most part, 78.7% of you guys are watching the videos but still not subscribed to the channel. Do me a favor and press that subscribe button so you don't miss any daily Rams content here at the Rams Digest. Let's get into this first bit of news here. The only bit of news we're really going to talk about in today's episode: trading for Myles Garrett. That is the rumor right now, and it's not for the Rams specifically, but there's a reason why we're talking about Myles Garrett and the possibility of him being traded before anyone clicks away and says, no, this isn't really possible. Let's not even think about this. Let's break this down for a second on why I think it's possible, why I think, well, first of all, very likely, obviously, Myles Garrett will get traded this offseason as the star himself. Defensive end Myles Garrett requests Browns trade him to a contender. Now, maybe some fans out there may be thinking about the Rams not being necessarily a contender, or maybe you think we are a contender. Either way, we're going to talk all about why I think the Rams should make this move. Myles Garrett requests trade. Here's a little quick quote from him. While I've loved calling this city my home, my desire to win and compete on the biggest stages won't allow me to be complacent. The goal was never to go from Cleveland to Canton. It has always been to compete for and win a Super Bowl. With that in mind, I have requested to be traded from the Cleveland Browns. Now, of course, now just because he's been traded, wants to be traded from the Browns, doesn't necessarily mean the Rams specifically are going to trade for him. But the reason why I'm bringing this story up is because I think this is a move. Les Snead, McVay, and all these people up top in the Rams organization may be interested in making this move. I know they invested heavily in the defensive line already, and the defensive line has definitely paid off, right? Those investments have already paid off in terms of you've built this now great defensive line that can actually be have replaced, right, Aaron Donald and all he brought for you, right? Technically speaking, or statistically speaking, right? Maybe you already found an Aaron Donald replacement, not necessarily straight up one for one, but 5 players on a D line for what Aaron Donald was able to do. Myles Garrett can add on top of that. Myles Garrett can actually add what Aaron Donald brought to the table, right? We talked about all last season. Well, there was a deadline for the Rams trying to bring Aaron Donald back, so they couldn't bring him back for the playoff run. I think many people may think now or may agree. I don't know if how you guys feel, but if Aaron Donald was in the middle of that defensive line, I don't think Saquon Barkley goes for 200 yards twice against the Rams, right? Specifically in that playoff game, though, 200 yards in that playoff game. So Myles Garrett, he's a bigger defensive end. He's a stronger defensive end. That's what we talk about here. He's going to go after the quarterback, but he can actually slow the run down as well, which is what I was saying about adding size to his defensive line. I still think you need some size in the interior of the defensive line, but adding Myles Garrett would help the Rams slow the run down as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We'll still have a couple more things to break down here as we'll pull this up here. Here is the letter from Myles Garrett. Kind of basically already we talked about his quote, but just a full kind of letter and statement from him via Adam Schefter on Twitter. So, you know, it's official. It's as official as it gets. Signature at the bottom from Myles Garrett himself. So he's requested a trade. It's official. No clickbait. No, oh, maybe this isn't actually happening. This is legitimately happening. Will the Browns trade him soon? Will they take their time with it? Who knows how this is going to go? All we know is Myles Garrett is probably on his way out of Cleveland. So we can move on to this screenshot here. I want to just acknowledge this for a second because I saw a couple comments already on Twitter and things, people talking about Myles Garrett in kind of a blasphemous way, in my opinion. Someone was saying, well, Myles Garrett's not as good as you think. Well, let's just break this down, how good Myles Garrett is. Here is Myles Garrett's exclusive company that he is in. Myles Garrett's 102 sacks are the fifth most by any player in the first 8 seasons since individual sacks became official in 1982. Reggie White is number 1, DeMarcus Ware number 2, TJ Watt number 3, Jared Allen number 4, and Myles Garrett sitting at the 5th spot for his first 8 seasons. So, you know, someone active right now, right, in terms of TJ Watt, you want to compare and say maybe TJ Watt's in a better position in his first 8 years than Myles Garrett has been. Regardless, Myles Garrett, in his prime of his career, he is a big, strong defensive end. You're going to want to get a guy like that who is the reigning defensive player of the year. can't imagine anyone's really opposed to bringing that in to what the Rams are doing on defense. And we talked about this. The Rams maybe need to make a couple signings, maybe bring some guys in on defense, adds that, bulk up that defensive line. Again, something that I think this move obviously does, right? And so we can move on to another screenshot here as we'll pull this up. Here is specifically talking about trading for Myles Garrett from the Rams' perspective, how it would put Rams' outstanding defense over the top, right? How young this defense is. We've already been talking about this, right? And so Cameron DeSilva talks about the possibility of what it would look like if the Rams traded for Myles Garrett right now, what it would do to this young defense. And sometimes I think that's what we kind of need, right? We talk about on offense, Kyren Williams, fairly young, Puka Nacua, fairly young, but as you sprinkle in some veteran talent with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford with that offensive line, a little bit of experience with Rob Havenstein, but then some youth, right, involved with Steve Avila and all these different names, right? You kind of are mixing that experience with youth, with inexperience, I guess you could say, right? So that's kind of what you would want to have on the defensive side of things. And sorry, I don't know if you guys saw me adjusting my light earlier, but the sun's going to shine in a little bit. It is what it is. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at, right? With adding Myles Garrett, he's going to add to this young defensive grouping. And so you can move on here and you can kind of get an idea of what Myles Garrett may cost when we go back and look at that Khalil Mack deal a few years ago from the Raiders to Chicago, right? So here's a cost that require a player like Garrett's caliber. Would obviously be high, likely similar to what Khalil Mack fetched from the Raiders, trading him to the Bears in 2018. Raiders received in that trade a first-round pick in 2019, another first-round pick in 2020, a third-round pick in 2020, and a 2019 sixth-round pick, so something around that range. Now, the Bears actually did get Khalil Mack and a second-round pick and a fifth-round pick. Now, I think if you guys don't remember, that was kind of an interesting time. My dad's a Raiders fan, so sorry for anyone who's offended by that, but my dad's a Raiders fan, so I was remembering at this time talking about this deal heavily and really thinking about it and paying attention to what the Raiders were doing at the time. And the biggest thing I think you have to acknowledge here too is, yes, you could compare the Khalil Mack and Myles Garrett situations, I guess, a little bit. The difference, I think, is I don't think many Raiders people or even Khalil Mack himself, as far as I remember, maybe I'm misremembering, but I don't think Khalil Mack necessarily requested a trade from the Raiders. I think they got John Gruden. He came into the Raiders situation and decided he wanted to trade everybody away, and including guys like Amari Cooper, and he wanted to kind of reset at many different positions that he didn't really need to reset at. And it was kind of an interesting time for the Raiders and what they were doing, and obviously a little bit of a downhill spiral for them, right? When they were in a situation where they're a pretty good team back then. And so now they kind of were in a wonky situation where they hired John Gruden and gave him maybe a little bit too much power to do whatever he wanted with the roster. This is not the situation for the Browns right now. This is not the situation for the Rams, right? So this is why it gets a little bit complicated. I think, yes, you can compare the situations and say this is what Khalil Mack at minimum will probably fetch you, but at the end of the day, I don't think that, I don't know if I just said Myles Garrett or Khalil Mack right now, but either way, this is not what trading for Myles Garrett would cost, I think. I think that was a very specific situation. I think this is the bare minimum. And if you're a Rams fan hoping that you're going to get Myles Garrett and a second-round pick or a third-round pick or something like that in return, I think you got to relax. I think we got to be realistic here. This is the best defensive end in the league. If you guys disagree with me, top 2, top 3, I don't think there's any disagreement there. And so you have to, I think, be a little bit more realistic when we're thinking about what this would cost. And so we'll pull us up here and pull up a new screenshot moving on. So this is a little bit of a reminder of what, first of all, teams in general are kind of looking at right now. So we're talking about this from Will Kunkel on Twitter. He says, when it comes to the Myles Garrett trade, remember this: the Panthers rejected the Rams' offer for Brian Burns, not Myles Garrett, caliber player, but a very good defensive end. They denied the trade offer of 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for Brian Burns. That was rejected. So Myles Garrett is probably going to cost a little bit more than 2 firsts and a second, right? And so that's kind of the situation. You also have to extend Myles Garrett, right? That cap situation is also what is kind of important, which is why we've been talking about last couple episodes or last few weeks, right? Talking about trading Matthew Stafford, releasing Cooper Kupp. Now, if you're going to go for Myles Garrett, that is out the window, right? We talked about this. I kind of broke it down and said, if the Rams front office genuinely thinks they have a chance to win a Super Bowl, then you have to do the opposite of trading those guys away. You keep the veteran guys, but you try to build around those veteran guys. This is one of those moves that I think would put you over the top in terms of Super Bowl contention. If you look at that last year's team, they were a pretty good team, but young, inexperienced on defense. Myles Garrett brings in the experience. A little bit smaller body size, not the best run defense on defense. Myles Garrett at least helps in the run defense department. We're talking about saving money and cap space and all that. You can extend Matthew Stafford, you can extend Cooper Kupp, and you can kind of maneuver their contracts to make it so their cap hit isn't as complicated this year, and you free up some money to bring in a guy like Myles Garrett and extend a guy like Myles Garrett, because if you do all that, then the Rams actually still have a little bit of cap space to play with. And so that's kind of the situation you're looking at for the Rams. I think this would be an almost borderline what they did trading for Matthew Stafford situation. You're going in all in for one more Super Bowl. The Rams really have to believe they can win if they do this deal. But if they do believe that, I think it's time to go all in and go for a guy like Myles Garrett to bring him onto their roster. And I was talking about being realistic, and this is why I'm bringing this up. Ben the Man, no offense to Ben the Man, shout out to you for going on Rams Twitter and posting an idea for a trade, right? And I get it, right? Byron Young, as much as he's been a good player for the Rams so early in his career as a rookie, maybe you're ready to kind of move on from him in terms of this specific trade, because you wouldn't mind upgrading Byron Young to a Myles Garrett and then obviously adding some picks involved. But I think this is still not the most realistic of deals. But here's a trade offer in general that Rams Twitter has been talking about. So Myles Garrett, the Rams get, and then they get a third-round pick. Also, again, I don't think getting a pick in return is necessarily something you should be expecting out of this deal, but sure. Myles Garrett gets, you get Myles Garrett to the Rams, you get a third-round pick from Cleveland. Browns get Byron Young, a first-round pick this year, the 26th pick in the draft, and next year's first-round pick for the Rams. Who, yes or no, from Ben the Ram? Yes, of course. I think if I'm a Rams fan, I'm taking that deal tomorrow. I'm taking that deal right now. Let's make it happen. Byron Young, we love you. Thank you for your services. We're getting Myles Garrett, the best defensive end in the league. I think this is a little bit of wishful thinking. I don't think you even have to trade Byron Young necessarily. For some reason, when we're talking about NFL trades, I think we also forget that players don't really get involved in trades too much. It happens often, it happens here and there, but I think it's okay for the Rams to keep a Byron Young as a depth piece, bringing in a guy like Myles Garrett, but specifically trading just picks. And if you want to throw Byron Young in there, fine. But I think in this situation here, I think the Rams could actually get a Myles Garrett without giving away any of their young talent. Maybe if the Browns want one of the guys and that helps move the needle, of course, take one of them. Jared Verse, no, off the table. Braden Fisk, probably off the table, right? Byron Young, sure, go ahead. Kobe Turner, probably off the table. So it's interesting to see what name it would be. I'm thinking maybe mostly Byron Young. Wouldn't be surprised if the Browns were interested in guys like, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk in this deal, but I think the Rams would heavily be against that. So that kind of defeats the purpose. You want this defensive line to be as good, as intact as they have been this past season, and just throw in a Myles Garrett in the rotation. So my idea for a trade would be here. This is what it looks like. This is actually from Over the Cap. There's a trade simulator they have, and they're actually saying in my scenario, the Browns win the deal. I don't care if the Browns, quote unquote, win the deal in my situation. As long as the Rams get Myles Garrett, that's all I care about. So here they're saying off of the evaluation, the Fitzgerald Spielberger evaluation chart, they're saying the Browns win the deal I'm giving. Maybe I'm giving too much. You guys let me know what you guys think about this offer. But for Myles Garrett, that's it. Rams don't get any picks back in return. Maybe you throw a 7th, a 6th, whatever Les Snead wants to negotiate for. But I have the Rams giving up a first-round pick this year, 26th pick in the draft, a third-round pick this year. It's the 90th pick in the draft. So that's 2 top 100 picks for the Browns. And also a 6th-round pick this year. So that's the number 203 pick in the draft. So on 3 draft picks this season. The Rams only have, I think, 7, so they would leave them with 4 this year, and 4 pretty big ones for them. 3 pretty big ones that are going out the door. But you're getting a Myles Garrett in return, and then next year's first-round pick, and next year's 4th-round pick. Personally speaking, honestly, I get it. Draft picks are very important. The Rams have been pretty good at drafting as of late. I wouldn't even mind making that 4th-round pick next year into a 3rd or even a 2nd-round pick if that's what it takes to get Myles Garrett, because I think this is a move that the Rams, if you can keep that defensive line intact, even if you hopefully don't have to trade any of your main defensive line pieces, but you're just adding Myles Garrett into that kind of mix of defensive ends, I really think that would be an incredible move for the Rams. Pass rush galore, right? They'd be one of the best pass rushes in the NFL immediately. And again, more ability to stop the run. Hopefully you can add maybe a big defensive tackle in the draft. Hopefully you could sign a big defensive tackle, maybe a veteran player to kind of slow the run down. Again, add the linebackers in the middle of the field to help slow the run down. Bring back an Ahkello Witherspoon. Keep that defensive backs intact. Maybe you have an Emmanuel Forbes break out on the year. overall, that defense would be very, very good. The Rams on offense would have to sign Alaric Jackson most likely, hopefully draft some offensive line depth, maybe add another receiver, right, via free agency or via the draft. Overall, I think the Rams would be on the up and up if you make this deal. You can make a competitive team that would compete for a Super Bowl. Imagine the Rams getting Myles Garrett, the same or within a month or two of the Lakers getting Luka Doncic, within another timeline of the Dodgers winning the World Series. I mean, this is kind of a fun time to be in Los Angeles right now. So it would be very exciting. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I'm not saying the Rams are listed as a favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but it is something I think the Rams should heavily consider, and I think they are probably on the phones with one another right now, talking about the possibility of getting a Myles Garrett on the defensive line. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys want to trade for Myles Garrett? Do you guys not want to? Do you guys have trade proposals in your mind? Hit the comments down below. Let me know what you guys think about this deal. That's going to do it for me on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'll bring you guys a mock draft Tuesday tomorrow because I had it already prepared until the Myles Garrett story kind of dropped. We'll break down a draft. We'll also break down some free agent, kind of on my ideal offseason, maybe including a Myles Garrett trade now. We'll see all that in the next couple episodes. But that's going to do it for me on today's episode of the Rams Digest. I'm your host, Joshua Giron, and I'm out.